Ha Dinh is an elementary school teacher and married her high school sweetheart. Born in Vietnam, she is a new author with a book that's inspired by the true story of the 10 months that her family spent at a refugee processing camp in the Philippines right before moving to America. It's Ha's tribute to really those who helped her and her family have a new life. So welcome to the Bookmark, Ha.
Thank you so much for having me.
So congratulations on your first book. There is this line in the book that I think ties in with the title beautifully. It says, "Beautiful things can grow anywhere like wildflowers." And so did someone say that to you?
You know what? I just love flowers. And my mom is actually named after the word orchid in Vietnamese, lang. So it's just, the story itself is rooted in, like you said, like a tribute to all the people who helped my family and me to come to America and have a better life. But it's also like a tribute to my mom. She passed away in 2020. And when that happened, it really sped up my desire to be a children's book author, because I wanted to document and make sure that my own children remember like our family's journey to America. And so flowers have always been a symbol of growth and hope for me. And so having wildflowers become part of the story was just a very natural thing for me to do, because it just reminded me so much of what my life story and what my family's story coming to America is all about. It's about hope.
I love that. I'm so sorry about losing your mom. And honestly, I know there's a lot of our listeners who will relate to your journey. And I think that's what drew me to the book. We have a lot of immigrant families listening whose kids will relate. But I think it also helps Canadian and American children better understand what some of the kids from their school or from their church may have gone through before living here. Was trying to educate North American families part of your motivation for the book?
Yes, definitely. As a teacher, I'm always like trying to figure out like how I can like teach my students about empathy and how they can, read different stories and understand different walks of life. But whenever I talked about myself, it's always like so shocking and surprising to them, because they all kind of assumed in their heads that like I was born in America. And when I talked about how I wasn't born in America, I was actually born in Vietnam, and I used to live in a refugee camp, and they were kind of very surprised. They're like, "What is that? What is that?" And I knew that this was such a like special setting. And it was such a special time that not a lot of people know about, and it's not very written about and documented in the children's book space. And I knew that like this was a really wonderful story to really share and teach young children about how, in no matter what circumstances they're in, there's always hope. And also how children from all over the world they walk all different steps of life, and even the children in their own classroom, they all have a story to tell about their own journey, how they came to Canada, how they came to America. And so that was kind of like my motivation too, to write this story, to show my students that, hey, sometimes like you sit right next to another child and you just automatically think that, hey, they probably have like the same experiences I do, but lo and behold, like they come with literally like a luggage of like different experiences and like so much to share with other people. And I think that this is a story that allows other children to ask really great questions about refugees, about immigration, about like their own family's journey to, North America.
Yeah. And there's such a beautiful story woven throughout too of the relationship with your parents, but also with a friend. So maybe, I don't know if you want to talk to parents and the kids here, but in this time of change where it's very emotional, what can parents do to help adjust? But also, how can kids be encouraged to find new friends in a new place?
I think that that's one of like those questions where I face like every year as an educator, because I get new students in the classroom every single year. And one of the things that I found to be very helpful is when parents are as transparent as they can with their own children and just letting them know, like, where they're moving to, any type of background knowledge that they can provide to their child. If you already know a school that, your child will be enrolled in, there's a website online. Show them the website. Let them see what the school looks like. Have them have the opportunity to possibly tour the school before school starts. And making friends is really intimidating for young kids. I mean, it's intimidating for me, and then I'm an adult.
Yes.
Walking into a room where I don't know anybody, I get very nervous. So just imagine how like a 5-year-old would feel with such like limited world and life experience. But I think that parents are pivotal and teachers are pivotal in just setting the stage for them and letting them know you're not going to be the only new kid, especially at the beginning of the year, even though, they might feel that other children know each other, but they're in different classes this year. Everybody is a friend to everyone. So just come in, give yourself grace. And just know that, everything is just a learning experience. Other children want to get to know you too. So just take it one step at a time. And it's going to be okay because especially at the beginning of the year, everything is new.
Yes, for everybody.
And everybody is new once, right?
Yeah, I love that. Now, your illustrator is also from Vietnam. Was this important to you?
For me, it was so important because, when I was growing up, just to pick up a book that like I felt reflected of like my culture, my traditions, and like my upbringing was just something very rare. And so I knew how special this book is and how it really allows a lot of like children who came to North America at the time that I did, when we were all children ourselves and didn't feel reflected in the books that we read. I wanted an opportunity to give another creator that opportunity to share their experiences. Bao actually was born and he grew up in Vietnam and he came to America. So his story is different from mine in the sense that I came to America when I was 5 and I literally grew up in America. And America really is like the only home that like I've ever related to and really remember. So I wanted him to have his experience be reflected as well. And there are a lot of cultural things that we share, especially like the game Oang Guang, and how you play that, like just squatting on the ground, just finding rocks and just drawing on concrete. And he got it right away. Even to the handwritten note in the book. Mm-hmm. So his handwriting, that is his handwriting. It's authentic French cursive that he learned in Vietnam when he was growing up. And so he wrote it in the French cursive. And I remember when we had a meeting to talk over like all the details of the book before sending it off to printing, it was mentioned that should we change the handwriting to script, which would be something that North American students would relate to more. But I asked to keep it because that's the authentic handwriting that children at that time who, grew up in Vietnam, they would have had to learn how to write like that.
Right.
So it would be so hard to explain that, to somebody who didn't have that experience to write as such. But that really was his, standard handwriting. That was his.
Yeah, I love that. And there's so much heart that goes into this beautiful kids picture book. We're basically out of time, but I'd love to know, because now you're a children's author, what are you working on next?
So my next book is called The Jade Bracelet, and it's coming out with Random House Studio in 2025. It is about a jade bracelet that my mom gave to me when I was a child. And at the time, I didn't realize like how important it really was to my mom. And then throughout the whole story, I learned the significance of it and how every culture is so different. And there are things about every culture that are just treasures. And those treasures are like family treasures that should be celebrated and should be passed on.
I love it. I love it. Oh, that's so great. Well, we'll have to have you back on when that time comes, when that book comes out.
I would love to be back. Thank you so much for having me.
Where wildflowers grow, Hà Dinh. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
But I wanted to know how the church, like what role the church played in your family coming to America. Is that common for families? Like, what's your experience with that?
So much. I had to pull in so many things into this story. The teachers, the friends, but yes, the church. So when we were back in Vietnam, like my parents are Buddhist by tradition.
Okay.
But they didn't really follow like a religion when they were back in Vietnam. But my mom used to take us to the market and to school, and she would walk past a church, a local church, and there was a shrine of Mary in the front. And every time she passed by, she would pray and pray to Mary and ask her that if one day, if we ever have an opportunity to come to America, that she would encourage her own children to follow the faith. If Mary would grant her, her wish, her prayer. And so when our paperwork went through and we were granted amnesty to come to the Philippines, my mom knew that was a sign. But when we came over to the refugee camp, everything was just very new. We were just getting acclimated into like our new life there. My siblings started making friends, and their friends were part of a youth group. It's called the Vietnamese Eucharistic Youth Group. And they would go do like little camp and trainings together. And one day they wanted to do some special activity with them and wanted to be like part of the group and really wear the uniform, kind of like boys and Girl Scouts. Mm-hmm. And they said, yeah, that would be wonderful, but you actually have to be Catholics to do that. Like we can play together, but if you want to join a youth group, you have to be Catholics. And so you have to be baptized. So you have to go home and ask your parents. So my older siblings went home and they said, Mom and Dad, we want to be baptized.
Hey, it takes one thing to draw you in, right?
It's just one thing, right? And God works in mysterious ways. And so they came home like, we want to be baptized. We want to be Catholics. And so my dad was like very hesitant, like, where is this coming from? But my mom all along, because she had been praying, right? And she said to them that basically, if this is something that you want to do, this is a life choice that you're making for yourself now, and you have to follow the faith. Like if you commit to this, this is your lifelong commitment. And so my older siblings committed to it. They were baptized there at camp, and they became Catholics. They became part of the youth group. And if you notice inside the book, on the page where is on the bed and Mom is folding clothes, her two siblings are in the back, and they're actually holding onto their scarves. And those are scarves from the youth group.
Cool. Because
I asked Bao, initially he had drawn them of just holding shirts. And I had asked Bao, instead of just holding onto shirts, right, I wanted them to hold onto their scarves. Because if they were to bring something to America that was so meaningful to them, what would it be? It would be their scarves, part of their uniform.
Yeah. Wow. You put so much detail into it. You're going to need to write like an adult novel on your story too, because there's so much that you can't put in a kid's book. But your mom, I just want to say your mom sounds like an amazing woman. She sounds like she was just amazing.
Thank you so much. And, like growing up in it, I just didn't realize how amazing that act of love was. To allow your own children to find their own faith, allow your children to find their own path in life. Until we came to America, and then we started going to church, and it was just us siblings, and the priests and the congregation, they would be like, where are your parents? Why are these children going to a Catholic church by themselves on Sundays, And we were like, oh, our parents are not Catholics. We are, though.
Yeah. I love it.
And so that was when I was like, oh my goodness, like this is a story all by itself.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's why bringing in the faith, having Bao illustrate city life in Vietnam, but including the church there, and including, as Ha and her mom was like walking down the alley, you could see the church, and having the mention of having the church bells ring. It's just a reminder that God is always there working his wonders, working his magic in all of our lives. even when we don't even notice it.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. And that we should be praying for our kids, you know,
Yes.
and their future, right? Like, oh, so good. It's okay. I've taken up enough of your time. I had a teacher growing up she's my grade 3 and my grade 4 teacher, and she was Vietnamese. Her name was Ha Nguyen. And every year at Chinese New Year, we would say Chak Mung Nam Moi, and she would give us, did I say it right?
Chúc mừng năm mới,
Yeah, I feel like that was something that never left my brain because she would give us a little like pastry
Lucky
and
money.
and lucky money. And it was just like, I felt like I knew something about the culture because she put that into the classroom, and I really appreciated that. And I know you're doing the same thing. So I think it's really important to keep the culture alive. And I'm excited that you're going to be really doing that in your new book too. It sounds like that's going to be a lot of what that new book's going to be about. So we'll definitely have you back on. But I've taken enough of your time, Ha. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you.